Hello everyone and welcome to a book review for the Vampire Lestat. Now unfortunately I did not do a review for book number 1, which is the Chronicles of the Vampire, and because I've changed how I do things, and so I am trying to go back to individual book reviews. But yeah, so we're starting off with this one and I don't have any of the information for book number 1 anymore because it was a bit ago. I don't remember when, but anyway, so the Vampire Lestat was written by Anne Rice. This was originally published, let's see, in 1985, it looks like. Yes, 1985. Now this particular book edition came out in 2014. But 1985 is when the Vampire Lestat was first published. And so this is book number 2 in the Chronicles of the Vampire. Just like book number 1, this is told in first person. Book number 1 is told from Louis's perspective, who is a vampire that Lestat created. Now, this is told in first person, all from Lestat's perspective. It talks about how his life before he was a vampire, and then how he became a vampire, that whole process, and then his life after. So it starts out in like the 1700s, like late 1700s, and the end of the book ends in 1985, I believe. Yeah, 1985. So we're following a long time and we follow as he creates vampires. There's not a lot of talk of Louis. The biggest person in this is Nikki. Now I'm going to say this as well. There's at times where I felt like this was giving a little bit of incest vibes between Lestat and his mother. Because there's times where it talks about my love, but maybe that was supposed to be more endearing between a mother and a son. But there is one point in this where one of their tongues is in the other's mouth. But they're trying to give the one blood. So yeah, but it does give a little bit of incest vibes. The biggest vibes it gives is gay. There's a lot about, you see Lestat kiss other men, like the one that's talked about the most is Nikki, and talks about being a lover. And so it does give a lot of gay vibes, gay feeling, but it's done in such a kind of like a tender way, but where it was not very publicized. I mean, you think about in the 1700s, 1800s, you know, even in the early 1900s, up in, you know, during the whole time this book is set, being gay was very kept hush-hush. It wasn't accepted like it is now, you know, so it was very much, you're quiet about it. You keep your mouth shut. But that being said, you could feel the love and the respect that Lestat had for Nikki and others, and I thought it was very sweet. Okay, now, one thing that can be very bothering to some people, there's a lot of talk about good versus evil. What's really good? Does God exist? Type of a thing. And since, like, is there a heaven and a hell? Is there God versus Satan? Is there, you know, stuff like that. There's talk of how they are lords of the night. There's a lot of talk about gods, but the term God does come up not only in a religious sense, but also in a mythological sense, like how you have God of the sun, so the sun god, the river god, things like that. So kind of like more mythological type gods. So yeah, there's really not much to say. One, I don't want to spoil anything, but I would definitely, do you have to have read this book before the first one? Not necessarily. However, there are things that will make more sense in this book if you have read the first one. So I do recommend reading it in order, but there's nothing in this that really spoils. Now, Louis from book 1 does appear in this, so I will say that. So you're going to miss some of the relationship development and character building of Louis if you don't. But there's really not anything that kind of spoils this first book if you happen to jump into this one first, in my opinion. So But there are, knowing the synopsis, I've read the synopsis for book 3, which is Queen of the Damned. There's already foreshadowing with certain things leading into book 3. So you're definitely going to miss some of the foreshadowing and some of the hints. So do read them in order, but it's not like do or die type of a situation. So Lestat is just recounting his life. He's recounting about, so again, like how he was made a vampire in his life after, how he picked who he picked to become vampires, how he chose to live where he chose to live, and certain things that he discovers about being a vampire and about the powers that he has developed since becoming a vampire. One of the things that I do like about Lestat is the biggest driving force with drinking blood is his priority. Now, it doesn't always work out, but he tries, if he has to drink human blood, which is more satiating and fulfilling than trying to do animal blood, but to survive off of a human, he tries to pick people that are murderers, rapists, molesters, gamblers, people that are evil as he describes it. So there is talk about that, and rather than going and getting someone that's completely maybe innocent, like a mother or someone that's taking care of a bunch of kids or a priest or, all this stuff. So he follows people and he decides this person's really evil. They're going to kill someone. They're a serial killer. So he's kind of trying to make the world a little bit better of a place. He wants to live among the mortals. There are some vampires that want nothing to do with mortals, will live in their own little coven type thing and things like that. There's a lot of talk of music. It doesn't go into a lot of detail, mostly about one of the lovers in here is named Nikki. And Nikki loves music and loves to play the violin. So you have a lot of that. There's this theater Lestat wants to go to act type of a thing. And so you see a little bit of his experience with that. So it was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. So let's talk stats. So as I told you, this does give gay lover vibes as well as a little bit of incest vibes. You do have quite a bit of talk of Satan worshiping. Because they are vampires, they talk about who is their God, who it is that they have to worship. If God as we know him in a religious sense, like Heavenly Father, well, if he's good, vampires are evil. So who is the God of the vampires? Satan. So they're going to worship Satan. So it talks a lot about worshiping Satan. The audiobook was narrated by Simon Vance, did a fabulous job. 21 hours and 40 minutes for the audiobook. And this is book number 2, as I had said at the beginning of the video, but there are 13 books in this series. Okay, so let's talk about words that come up and then we'll be done with this wrap up. So the word God comes up 285 times. Again, some of that is done like a mythological god, like sea god, river god, sun god, and some of them is done in a religious sense, like, the God that created the earth type of a thing. So sometimes it's mythological, sometimes it's not. There are a few times when reading this book that I noticed that the word God should have been capitalized because of its usage, but it wasn't. That's just a typing error type of a thing. But for the most part, you can tell when it's used in a religious sense because the G for God is capitalized, whereas when it's done in a mythological sense, it is lowercase. So you can kind of tell when reading the book. The word hell comes up 93 times, which is understanding how it is. I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, what the hell? But other times it's done in a religious sense, like heaven and hell, okay? Bastard comes up twice. Oh, one other thing that you do want to be aware of going into this, there is animal death and it does get descriptive. Now, the animal death and the description is when the death is from another animal, so another animal killing an animal, or if killing the animal is done in self-defense. Okay, so it's not like someone's out just trying to kill animals for the joy of it or something, which is sick, but it's more understandable the way it's done, but it is still descriptive, and I know that can bother a lot of people. Okay, moving on, we have the word damn comes up 53 times, and not always in the form of damn. Sometimes it's damnable, damnedest, damnation. Okay, so you have a couple of variations. The word Christ comes up 6 times, and every time that is done in a religious sense, as well as the word or the name Jesus comes up once, again, done in a religious sense. The term Virgin Mary comes up 4 times. And yeah, now the term rape comes up once, but it does not get descriptive. It's just like so-and-so was going to rape someone or something along those lines. So it's just mentioned the one time. Bitch comes up 2 times, whore 3 times, breasts comes up 8 times, and sometimes it's along the lines of her breasts were bared, or I rested my head on his breast, things like that. So not always in a sexual way. The word nipples comes up 2 times. One of them is done when someone is helping someone change their clothing that can't fully maybe do it by themselves due to whatever situation. And so it's like I saw her breasts and I saw her nipples. So not done in a sexual way. The word Lord comes up 13 times. Sometimes it's in a religious sense. Sometimes it's more like a social status, like lord and peasants type of a situation. So kind of more like a social status type of a thing. It's the same thing with the word God, where if it's done in a religious sense, it's going to be a capital L. If it's done more like the social standing and status, it's going to be a lowercase l in the book. And that's it. So those are the terms. Those are some content that you should be aware of going in if any of that's particularly bothersome. I enjoyed this. I am so looking forward to getting to the 3rd book, which again is Queen of the Damned. And again, this is a little bit more of a commitment because there are 13 books, but book number 2 was just as good as the first one in my opinion. I loved it. And just to see all the different personalities, how certain vampires are reared and respected more than others, or revered is the word I'm looking for. And how some of these vampires respect their lessers, I guess, because they have all this power, but yet they still respect mortals and will be nice to them when they can and things like that. And others are like, they want nothing to do with them. So there's a lot of talk and distinction between all of that, and I found that fascinating and loved it. So let me know, have you read the Chronicles of the Vampire series? If you have you finished the whole series, or what book did you end on? Are you enjoying the series? Have you read the Vampire Lestat or anything else by Anne Rice? I don't know if, it looks like there's others. She's also written something called Lives of the Mayfair Witches. So if you have not read the Vampire Chronicles but other books by Anne Rice, let me know what is your favorite book by Anne Rice. So talk to me in the comment section below, and until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book. And I'll talk to you later.